If you see this face and if you hear this voice, that can only mean one thing. That means the San Francisco 49ers have won their 10th straight game. They have clinched the number 2 seed. They're hosting a game this weekend at Levi Stadium, at least one, and they're the hottest team in the NFL. I'm with Brian Rennick, Al Sacco. I'm Zain Nakvi. This is another episode of the 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast on the Audacy Network. We are celebrating another victory. This one was a little bit close at the beginning, but a great tune-up for the playoffs. We didn't know seeding going into it. There was a lot of stuff up in the air. We didn't know who they were going to play next week until the Green Bay game, and we know now. The old friends from the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle Seahawks, who the 49ers have beaten twice already this year, by the way. So just like last year, a third time against a divisional opponent in the playoffs to move forward. Guys, let's unpack this one.
I just think, to start, I think we're getting to the point right now where this team finally looks dominant. We've been waiting for that for a while. When are they going to put it all together? And they have. I think that they are right now. And they're doing things right now, you guys. So you know me, I'm always thinking about this stuff. My wife will look at me and be like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you ignoring me? What's going on in your head?" And I'm just thinking about football. That's it. I'm not thinking about my gumad or anything like that, right? Not that I have a gumad, but I'm just thinking football. That's it. So I'm thinking about all these weird stats with the Niners, and I'm like, all right, they've scored 37 points or more in the last 3 games. 37, 37, 38. When's the last time they did that? You'd have to go back. I think it's 51. They scored 37 plus in 3 of the last 50 games or 51 games. It's right around there. You'd have to go all the way back. The 4th time that they did it was the NFC Championship in 2019. So that would have been the 4th time going all the way back before this 3-week stretch, if that makes sense. That's how prolific this offense has been. With Brock Purdy under center, that this isn't counting when they were down 7-3. Since he came in, they have outscored their opponents 198-97. They've scored 33, 35, 21 on a Thursday night at Seattle, 37, 37, and 38. This team is rolling. The defense doesn't look as invincible, but still probably, I think most people would take the Niners defense over anybody else going into the playoffs or pretty much anybody else. It's still very, very good. And the offense has been a juggernaut. It's been the best offense in the league the last 6 weeks. What else can you ask for? What else can you ask for? They finally put it together. They're finally rolling. And I think along with the Bengals, they're probably the 2 hottest teams in the NFL right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. The 49ers defense pitched another shutout in the second half, and nobody talked about it just because it's just another second half shutout. No big deal. And because of that dominant victory, and the fact, and let's be honest, the fact that the Bills played one less game than the 49ers. The 49ers ended the season number 1 in point differential, number 1 in scoring defense. And not only that, but Sunday's game marked a clean sweep of the NFC West. They went 6-0 against their division rivals, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and the Rams, to the tune of the 49ers putting up 169 points in those 6 games and their opponents putting up 53, which means they gave up less than 10 points a game against their division rivals. That's just bonkers. And that is, I don't think there's anything that you could really point to and go, there's something out there that could tell us that this team is more dominant than this, right? It's difficult. It's difficult to sweep your division. The last time the 49ers did it, it was 1997. Somebody actually just put it up right as I was about to say it. Let me throw it on the screen for them. 1997 was the last time the 49ers swept the NFC West. It's not easy to do. And not only did they did it, but they just absolutely slaughtered all of them. Just non-competitive every single game. And it's just really, really impressive. And I've said this before. I've run out of superlatives for this team. I can't even really figure out how to talk about them because they've just been so good to the point where I feel like we don't talk about some of the things that they've done enough, right? Because it just becomes commonplace. And so, you know, they're the only team, again, besides the Bills, to allow less than 300 points this season. Again, just an absolutely incredible performance. And there isn't a weak link on this team. You know, the offense is now matching the defense, or you could argue has surpassed the defense in terms of their dominance. And even the special teams. The special teams finished the season ranked 15th in DVOA. Last season, they were 26th. So again, every aspect of this team has gotten better from last season. And last season, they made it to the NFC Championship game. So I think that speaks to the expectations that we should have for this team going into the postseason.
And that thought about the point differential, Brian, it's the first time that they've led the league in point differential since 1995 with a defense that was led by
Pete Carroll.
Yes. Which is the ironic thing. But I think that, to your point, and to Al's point, I think that where we were, 10 weeks ago when they were 3-4, it's like you say, Al, how the turntables, right? It's just a completely different vibe on this team. They have confidence that they can get the job done on both sides of the ball. Kyle's coaching with the confidence that, frankly, I've never seen before from him. And you just know, like, even when Arizona was close, even when it was close in the first half, they got the old Madden double up at the end of the half, which I don't know if there's a better team in the league that does the double up with the end of the half score, and then the beginning of the half they score again.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a better team in the league than the Niners at that. So once they got that score at the end of the half, I'm like, okay, this is over. They're going to score at the beginning of the second half, and then it'll be out of reach. And that's exactly what happened. Like, there wasn't really one moment in this game where I was actually worried, because they got that touchdown off the fluke play where Demo was in position and he could have either knocked it away or possibly picked it off. AJ Green was just one of the best wide receivers in the league at one point, right? High point in that ball, and what do you do? And Gibson
taller than him, and also there's a bit of a push off from AJ Green there.
I saw that too. I saw the
I
replay.
digress.
They could have, but you know how the NFL is. But even at that point, they got down 7-0. I'm like, oh, it's not a big deal. They came right back. They took the lead, and then after that, it was basically that was it. They went back and forth for one more drive. Like you said, they pitched a shutout in the second half, and it's just become the norm that we've come to expect from this 49ers team. And to go from perennially losing for all of those years, from when Mariucci left until Harbaugh got here, and then when Harbaugh left, to making hopefully deep runs in the playoffs 3 out of the last 6 years, it's been a very, very interesting time in Kyle Shanahan's tenure. And I think that I want to give him his flowers, because I've been critical of Kyle, right? I have been very vocal about that on the show, but the job that he's done this year, to me, he's earned Coach of the Year. Mm-hmm. He has taken his team, I think, and done his best job. I feel like this is the best team that he's coached and the best job that he's done. And he's taken a team that was dead in the water twice this season, brought him back from the depths, and he's put him in position to potentially win a championship. And that's what other coach in the league is going to do that for you? What other coach is going to do that? I can't think of very many at all.
Yeah, he's shot himself up into the upper echelon here, and he needed to this year. I don't think that's unfair to say, and he did. And he's right now the only 49ers head coaches with multiple 13-win seasons are Shanahan, Walsh, and George Seifert, and that's pretty damn good company. And there's just been some cool things that they did this year. Ayuk's the first wide receiver with 1,000 yards and at least 8 touchdown catches since Crabtree did it. Kittle and McCaffrey are the first Niners teammates with at least 10 plus touchdowns since Gore and Vernon Davis did it back in 2009. They scored 23 offensive touchdowns in their last 6 games, if my math is right. They had 27 in the first 11. Mm-hmm. This has just been great to see. And one of the things that really sticks out to me, George Kittle has 7 TDs in his last 4 games?
4 games, yeah.
Yep. So he never had more than 7 TDs. He never had more than 7 TDs in a season coming into this year. What's different? How come they're scoring all these points? What's different? Does McCaffrey make a big difference? Yes. I think that's a big part of it. I think the other thing is the guy behind center.
Yep.
And I really feel like it's that easy to say. And one of the things Purdy did, a stat that stuck out to me, Patrick Mahomes and Tua led the NFL with a 6.3% touchdown percentage this year, and Josh Allen was second at 6.2. They're the only 3 QBs who qualified, had enough attempts to qualify that were over 6. Purdy is at 7.6%. He doesn't have enough attempts to qualify quite yet. Nor will he since the season's over. But just to even do that, it's not like he did it in 2 games. He did it over 6 basically full games. That's really impressive. And again, the proof is just in that this team has turned into a juggernaut. They're an offensive juggernaut. They're the best offense in the league the last 6 weeks. And the main difference, I think McCaffrey makes a huge difference, obviously, because the offense is really running through him. But you cannot deny at this point. We spent years talking about it. What's the holdup on offense? Why aren't they scoring? They have all this talent. I think the answer is right there, you guys. Purdy is not a finished product. He's still a rookie. He still makes mistakes. I saw somewhere I forgot what the number was, but he's still, the turnover worthy plays that PFF says he's still making, but whatever. He's a rookie. Any rookie does. Exactly. Right. Whatever. He's not perfect, but he's perfect for this team right now. He's making the right decisions. He's throwing the ball where it needs to go. He's doing what Kyle wants him to do. He's playing with ice in his veins. He's great in the red zone. You know what they're doing? Excuse my language. They're finally fucking scoring touchdowns. How long have we waited for this to happen? They are finally scoring fucking touchdowns. Thank you. Thank you. We've been waiting since, I don't even know what. I don't know, since Steve Young? I don't know, for this team to rake up points like this. So it's really exciting. I don't know what's going to happen, but to have a quarterback who's put some juice back in the Niners again and it hasn't divided the fan base, it's just been cool to see.
So really quick, Brock Purdy has set the rookie record for the 49ers for a number of touchdowns thrown, 13 touchdowns. That is a 49ers rookie record, by the way.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and
awesome.
then not only that, but he has 4 interceptions on the season. One of those was that stupid came in that Chiefs game when they got blown out and he threw an interception. Yeah. So in reality, outside of garbage time, he's 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
Well, Juwan dropped one too, right?
Awesome.
So
yeah. And so
right.
I agree, Al. Like it's hard because it's like this kid has 5 starts, right? He has 5 starts. I mean, six games if you include Miami, and you should, because he came in the second series of the game, right? So
yeah, he basically played that whole game.
Yeah, he played the whole game. And I don't, like I said, I don't want to deal in hyperbole. I don't want to deal in like Brock Purdy is the best quarterback the 49ers have had since Jeff Garcia, right? Or Colin Kaepernick, or depending on your flavor of quarterback. But the last time that this offense was this dominant and scored touchdowns at a stretch like this was 2013 when Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback. So this is the best offense, arguably, the 49ers have had since the Colin Kaepernick-led 2013 team that, well, we won't talk about how that season ended, especially with what's happening this week. But
did they score like that then, though? Did they score? It's not his question.
There was a stretch that they did. That's what I'm talking about. There was like a 5-game stretch where they scored 30 plus in, right?
All
because for the 49ers, they've scored 30 plus in 5 of their last 6 games, right? The only one being that game in Seattle on Thursday night up in Seattle, right? And like I said in that game, the 49ers are playing like this is a Thursday night football game. And there still wasn't a single time in that game where I felt like the Seahawks were actually in the game. Mm-hmm. I understand what the final score was. Like, I get it. But regardless, that game never felt like it was going to end any other way than with a 49ers victory. And so it is Brock Purdy. And can this continue? I don't see why not, because to be perfectly honest, and I feel like we talked about this maybe last episode. There's nothing that Purdy is doing that it's like gimmicky, right? Like where defensive coordinators could look at it and go, okay, if we could take this away, then I think we'll be fine, right? There's nothing that he's doing that defensive coordinators can take away, right? Especially with Kyle Shanahan as his play caller. All Brock Purdy is doing is the answers to the test that he's already been given by Shanahan, right? It's like, hey, here's the play. If this is the look we get, here's where you're going to go. And he goes there, and it's right? Because Kyle Shanahan can call an incredible game. And if the play breaks down, more often than not, Purdy is going to, at the very least, extend the play, either throw the ball away or get positive yardage. Now, there were a couple times in this game where I felt like, oh, okay, there's some rookie things, right? The 2 sacks that he took, especially that one that was like, I don't know, it was like 15 yards or whatever, where he thought that he could outrun Isaiah Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes Purdy overestimates his own athleticism. And I think that can get him in trouble in the future. But I also feel like he is such a quick learner that situation, he's going to watch that on film and go, okay, next time I got to know, hey, I'm not going to outrun this guy, right? Like I got to do something. I got to get it. I got to get the ball away, whatever the case may be. I saw something the other day, which I thought was interesting. We talk about Brock Purdy being sneaky athletic. And really what he is he's quicker than fast, right? He doesn't have long speed, but he is really quick. And Jack Hammer, who covers the 49ers for the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, tweeted out Brock Purdy's 10-yard split in the 40, which was 1.55. Okay. Christian McCaffrey's 10-yard split in the 40 is 1.55. Tyreek Hill's split in the 10-yard split in the 40 is 1.50. So I quote tweeted and I said, Brock Purdy and Tyreek Hill, same player, right? Like obviously joking, but that's where his escapability comes from. And so you combine his poise with his escapability and his football intellect, and you've got a quarterback that can run this Kyle Shanahan system to the level that we've seen it. And like I said, I don't see where this would slow down. Now, I could be wrong, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is that they're not turning the ball over. So I'll throw some stats at you guys. So the 49ers have turned the ball over 17 times this year. That is the 3rd fewest in the league. Their quarterbacks, so all 3 of them, Trey, Jimmy, and Purdy, have combined to throw 30 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Those 9 interceptions are also 3rd fewest in the league. They're not turning it over. Al, I remember a few weeks ago you put out a stat of how Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks generally, it was almost like a 1-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio with most of the quarterbacks, Jimmy included. They're not turning the ball over. And that's to me, that's the biggest thing. When you play a clean game, it increases your chance of winning exponentially. And they have been playing clean game after clean game. And even when they do make mistakes, their defense leads the league in interceptions. They have 20 interceptions. That's number 1 in the league. And that is tied for the first in the league. Yeah. So they can get the ball back. And I think that when you have a combination of not turning it over and the rate that they're turning the other team over, that lends to what we're seeing now. And that's all that Kyle needed really, is a quarterback who doesn't give it to the other team constantly, doesn't throw it to them. And he has that in Purdy. And I'm not gonna knock him for taking the sacks that he did. It's interesting because he took more sacks than he usually does. And I wonder if that's just a product of him like being like, okay, I just need to know when to call time of death on this play and basically just like sit down and take a sack, right? Rather than force it somewhere. And to me, that's a sign of maturity, right? Because even when he's running around outside the pocket, like you could get hurt out there. I wonder if he was even instructed by his coaches, like, yo, I don't want you running outside of the pocket. Just take the sack, get down, live for another play because of the nature of where they're going in the playoffs. So it's just, he seems wise beyond his years. And when you look at him, it doesn't look like you're looking at a rookie. It looks like you're looking at a 5 or 6 year veteran. The way that he commands the huddle, the way he throws the ball, like he's made that corner, like against the grain corner throw to the back of the end zone, throw to Kittle, like a thing now. Every game he makes that throw. And that's not an easy throw for a quarterback to make. It just makes it look routine. And now you add Elijah Mitchell, who had a fantastic game coming back in his first game in a couple months. And you add Deebo as well, who looks spry. This team, as long as they don't turn it over, this team is absolutely, to me, the favorite in the NFC.
Real quick, to go back, speak to that, Al, hold on just real quick. Yep. I forgot to mention this, Zane. You spoke about the turnovers. 49ers also led the NFL in turnover differential, which, again, speaks to what they've been doing.
Yeah. And, go ahead, Zane. Oh, we're good. Oh, sorry. Okay. Brian, going back to what you were saying, 2013, the Niners had a 5-week stretch where they scored 35, 34, 32, 31, and 42. And that was weeks 4 through 8 that year. But then they kind of went They only had 9 points against the Packers. The couple games before that, they had 7 against the Colts, 3 against the Seahawks. So they did score that year, but they were a little more inconsistent than we've seen with Purdy.
Yeah.
Who looks like he's, like you guys said, here to stay. The highest passer rating through 5 NFL starts in the Super Bowl era. Kurt Warner, 131.4,
Yeah.
Brock Purdy, 119, Mahomes, 116.3, Romo, 115.8. Those other 3 guys had pretty good careers. So
Yeah.
it just really looks like he's set up to, again, unless he totally has an implosion in the playoffs, a 4 interception type thing or something where it just looks like he loses it. If it stays status quo, it's hard not to think he's going to have the leg up on the QB1 moving into next year. And that's pretty exciting.
And here's the thing that I want to ask you guys, because my answer is no. Like we always, and I understand saying it, right? Like, unless he has this implosion in the playoffs, and the playoffs are different. I get it. All of that. Is there anything that Brock Purdy has put on film or anything that you have seen in any game to tell you that an implosion like that is even in there? Because it doesn't to me. He's just, and again, to me, a game like that from a 49ers quarterback is only happening if all they're trying to do is fit balls into the middle of the field, right? That's a Jimmy Garoppolo game where he's like, I'm not throwing outside the numbers. That throw that Purdy made to Christian McCaffrey in the second half, it was outside the numbers to the opposite hash, right? That was prior to, I believe it was prior to Mitchell's second touchdown.
Right.
Or is I that or prior to? No, it was prior. That's what it was. It was prior to that Kittle touchdown.
The Kittle's the
one in the corner of the end zone.
Yeah.
That throw, Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't dream of attempting that throw, and Purdy threw it on a rope. And so, we've talked about his limitations, and part of it is his arm talent. Honestly, I think he has more than enough arm to succeed in this offense, right? And that's the other thing. You don't need a cannon to succeed in this offense. You just have to be accurate and hit the open man. And so far, he's shown an insane ability to do that. And before we move off Purdy, I do want to say, for those of you that are listening or watching, if you go to my Twitter timeline, somebody had tweeted out a video of Matt Campbell on Senior Day when it was Brock Purdy Senior Day. I mean, it looked like Matt Campbell's son was graduating with how emotional Matt Campbell was. And it just kind of goes to show you what this kid did for that Iowa State program. And now he's brought that to the NFL and to the 49ers. And I think if Brock Purdy was 6'3" and not 6 foot, he'd have been a top 10 pick. I can almost guarantee it. It's just, he does not have the measurables, and people get scared off by that. But quarterback is far more than just being, God's gift to quarterbacking. And he displays that in spades.
And sometimes you get lucky because you get a guy who has things that you can't measure, and that's where I think they are with them.
That dog.
And
the other thing, Zane, I think you said it about they're not turning the ball over. Jimmy wasn't turning the ball over either, and I think the reason for that is Christian McCaffrey. Think for both of these guys, when they needed a check down or an outlet or an easy completion, he's there. The job that Lynch and Shanahan or whoever brought him in, whoever was the one who pulled this is one of the could end up being, see how far they go, one of the great Niner trades of all time. If they finish this thing this year and they win the Super Bowl, you could say it is the best Niner trade of all time. This guy has come in the focal point of the offense. He's been a calming presence to an offense that was having a lot of trouble scoring, to an offense that shot itself in the foot a lot. He's been the presence. He's been the one that the offense has gone through. He had, in 11 games with them this season, he led the team in rushing with 746 yards, the 6th different running back under Shanahan to lead the team in rushing. He caught 52 balls for 464 yards. Overall, he had 211 touches in those 11 games, 1,210 scrimmage yards, 10 total touchdowns, and then he threw for a touchdown. Didn't make the Pro Bowl. He's been an MVP. Wow. Like he's been an MVP candidate these 11 games, and I think if he was with the Niners the whole season, I think he would have. Still think it's Mahomes' award, but I think he would have gotten more push for the MVP this year because he's been that good, and I'm really excited to see him in the playoffs. I think it's going to be great for the nation to kind of see what he does for the team, and he's just, to me, been. Deebo was Superman in a lot of ways last year. He definitely was, but McCaffrey's just been somebody who's just brought everything together for them.
And I think the biggest thing here is that who knew all along that all they were missing, the missing piece from a Kyle Shanahan offense was like an elite running back. We were like, oh, it's the quarterback, which, I mean, partially, yes. They need better receivers. It's the O-line play. But really, this has been the largest difference-making acquisition that they've had. I mean, you could argue Jimmy was also, but they didn't really have a quarterback at that time, right? Like it was just a bunch of rookies and Nick Mullins. But this has been the biggest difference-making acquisition, I would say, around the league this year, like since the time he was acquired. And the job that Christian McCaffrey has done, he's a mismatch against everybody. He splits out wide, it's a mismatch. He goes in the slot, it's a mismatch. He's coming out of the backfield, it's a mismatch. Like more so than Deebo because he plays the running back position and he's able to find creases in the middle because he has that experience. Like Deebo was really good at that last year, but it's less so this year because teams are expecting that. Now you add McCaffrey to the mix, and this offense all of a sudden, it seemed like when before McCaffrey got here, and I guess before he got into the mix, he started in the second game. By the way, they're undefeated since he's taken over the starting role. I mean, that's no surprise. Mm-hmm. But before he got here, the offense was disjointed. They were clicking at times. They were not clicking at other times. Deebo was getting very little out of the backfield. And they just seemed kind of discombobulated. And he's, like you said, he's brought that calming presence, that sure-handed presence that the quarterbacks is really just the quarterback's best friend. To be able to dump it off to your security blanket when the play breaks down or when you can't find anybody open and know that every time he touches the ball, he's getting 6 yards. I mean, that's a huge luxury. And that to me is one of the biggest parts of Brock Purdy's development that we can turn to, is that he has that safety outlet because he doesn't have to force it down the field. He doesn't have to force it in tight windows. All right, cool. Nothing's there. Let me dump it off to McCaffrey and get an easy 6 yards. So again, I think that this is a Super Bowl roster, right? And McCaffrey, by the way, is going to be here long term. Like he's under contract, right? So this is not like an Emmanuel Sanders situation. Yes, correct. So this is not an Emmanuel Sanders situation where at the end of the year they'll let him walk. He will be a part of this team going forward, and I think that's one of the most exciting things.
And now he's got that compliment to him too with Eli Mitchell back, because every time Mitchell just looks like a freight train every time he runs the ball. He's fast, he's violent, and this season he's only had, what does he carry the ball, 40 times, 45 times all year. But he's had, in the games that he's played, he's averaged 6.8 yards per carry, 4.9, 6.5, 5, and 11. So he's coming in and he's just putting the hammer down on people. And to have both of them going into the playoffs, I know we're talking so much about Purdy, and rightfully so, but you may see games with them where they're just running it down people's throats. That could happen too. And Purdy just plays sort of the complement role. It's really exciting offensively. We haven't even got, I think, the defense. It's really exciting offensively what they're capable of.
Yeah, really quickly, one more point on this. When you can have your running backs taking off like 6.5 yards a pop, it makes it that much easier for your offense. It puts you in a short down and distance for second and third down. And that's much easier than being in like a 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, especially on a young quarterback. So I think that's the other thing as well, is that they've been able to keep it like manageable for him on third downs. And it's been so much easier because of that. And even then, like it's 3rd and 4. All right, cool. It's just a quick dump off from McCaffrey in the first down. Like how many times have we seen that season? So it's just, I think that they're clicking on all cylinders. This is what we had hoped for. And hey, full steam ahead in the playoffs.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm a little bit worried about, if the cornerback thing, the passing thing, that's where it could get a little dicey. I think Lenore kind of has a sign on him right now that says throw at me, which is fine. It is what it is. He's going to get tested. You know, Hufanga towards the end of the season, Ryan's mentioned he's had some issues with eye discipline, maybe getting his eyes caught in the backfield or whatever it is. And the Niners had given up, 365 yards or whatever it was to Jared Stidham, and David Blau at 164 yards passing. I know they had the one long pass, but in the first half too. So that's sort of the one place that I am a little bit worried on the defensive side of the ball, where they can maybe get exposed a little if the defensive line isn't dominating, if Dre Greenlaw isn't back. They could get exposed a little bit there. The difference is I think they can score with teams now, whereas before I thought if you give them 30 points, you were done. Now I can see them winning a game 38-35 if they have to. But that's the one spot I'm still, we're happy. It's been a great run. But if I want to win a Super Bowl, I don't want to win a couple. We've won playoff game. I want to win a Super Bowl. And if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you're probably going to have to beat Burrow, Allen, or Mahomes. So
Sure.
that's something that's definitely got to get shored up. And that's probably the one glaring worry I would have if you made me pick something out right now.
I would say that, you said outside of that long, or outside of that one long reception, right? So that reception was 77 yards. Without that, Blau was 13 of 17 for 103 yards. So, not still not impressive by any stretch. I thought Lenore covered that play really well. The thing that Lenore doesn't have is, or at least it appears right now, is great ball skills. It's, not ideal. But you think back to last offseason or last postseason, the 49ers had like no corners, right? They were again trotting out Josh Johnson and Ambry Thomas, right? And Dante Johnson. And what did I say? I meant Josh Johnson. Oh, my bad.
Well,
Not
they,
Josh
they
Johnson.
tried out Josh. They tried Josh Johnson, out
which is
game,
why
right?
it was so bad, right? Because they have quarterbacks going out. No, sorry, Josh Norman, right? Josh Norman, Dante Johnson, Ambry Thomas, right? And DeMeco still put on an absolute coaching clinic in the postseason. So I'm not super concerned, because I think they've shown an ability in the past to be able to scheme around at least one liability in the secondary. And so as long as Charvarius Ward is up to the task, and I think that he is, I think they're going to be okay, especially at the very least, especially in this NFC field, right? Like you said, Al, obviously we want a Super Bowl, and you're gonna have to win one facing the likes of a Mahomes and Allen or a Burrow. I don't think anybody else is coming out of the AFC, so it's one of those three. But so I'm not overly concerned, but there is some concern there. And I think this team has such tremendous veteran leadership that they're gonna, especially on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side as well. But we're talking about the defense. I really think Fred Warner and company are gonna lock it up, right? To use a Wedding Crashers reference, lock it up. You lock it up. Lock it up, right? I think that they're going to look at each other, in this week, and that's what they're going to say to each other. And I think they're going to come out and absolutely smother this Seahawks team, and we'll preview that on Wednesday. But before we get out of here, we got about 13 minutes left. One thing that we wanted to do was give out some season awards, right? And we wanted to do some that are maybe not quite what you would think, a couple that you would, and some that you wouldn't. And so I wanted to do that with you guys. And so the first award, if you will, that we want to hand out is our Offensive Player of the Year. And I think, I almost want to say non-Christian McCaffrey edition, right? Because we've got a couple others that are non-player specific or whatever. So let's do that, right? Let's make it a little bit more difficult, because we just talked about how Christian McCaffrey quite literally transformed this offense. He is the Offensive Player of the Year. You could argue, outside of Justin Jefferson going meteoric, he's probably one of the top. Should be a top 5 finalist for Offensive Player of the Year. But for you, 49ers Offensive Player of the Year, non-Christian McCaffrey edition. Since I threw the non-McCaffrey edition in, I'll go first. And my pick is going to be Brandon Ayuk. And the reason being is because he got his first 1,000 yard season, which is great for Ayuk. But not only that, he really gives this offense a number 1 wide receiver and allows Deebo Samuel to be whatever they need him to be in any given game. It almost allows Kyle Shanahan to just use Deebo Samuel as a chess piece based on opponent, because Ayuk is reliable. I think he has the best hands on the team. I think I want to say he's the best route runner on the team, but I actually do think that's still Christian McCaffrey. But at the very least, they're tied in terms of their route running ability. And it's just, it was a great year for him. I think this is just the beginning for Ayuk. I think this is his first 1,000-yard season. I don't think it'll be his last. And I just love the kid. And I found out this season he was born in the next town over from me. So he's a local kid for us as well. Grew up in Reno, but born in Rockland, California. And then actually went to junior college in Rockland as well at Sierra College before he went to Arizona State. So I'm going to give my Offensive Player of the Year award to Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I would second that. That's what I was going to say. And you made a good point about that he became the number one receiver this year. And I'll go even farther with Deebo. The Niners paid Deebo a lot of money. I know Deebo's not necessarily a true wide receiver. He's a jack of all trades, but he didn't have a great year. He's hurt. He only had 3 games where he had over 58 yards receiving. You're paying him big bucks. And I love Deebo, but he didn't have a great year. It just is what it is. It happens sometimes. And Ayuk really stepped up. He was someone that was a safety valve for the offense. He made some huge catches. You look at the last drive there last drive regulation against the Raiders, how clutch he came up with the 4 catches on there. 8 touchdown receptions and 1,000 yards. Like we said, the only receiver to do that since Crabtree. Deebo had the yardage last year and only had 6 reception touchdowns. I know he had a lot more with the rushing, but Ayuk's done things as a receiver we haven't seen with the Niners. And, other than Deebo and Crabtree and Bolden had a few good years there. But it's been kind of few and far between. So to have somebody there who I think is number one, and we mentioned it last show, Brian, if he was on a team that threw more, he wouldn't just have 1,000 yards. He probably had 1,400 yards this year, or a team without as many weapons. So he has taken that next step this year. It's exciting. And for me, I think other non-McCaffrey, he would be my choice too.
So I'm going to go away from that because I want to be different. And my Offensive Player of the Year is it's George Kittle. And Kittle set a career high with 11 touchdowns this year. He had 765 yards receiving, and he had 60 catches as well. But his value to this offense is far beyond receiving the ball. And I think one of the biggest complaints that we had about the offense was that they didn't find Kittle in the red zone. And specifically over the last 4 games when Purdy has started, they've been able to consistently find him in there. And that's something that was missing in his entire career here, where he wasn't too much of a red zone threat. And all of a sudden now, the changing quarterback, they're able to kind of integrate him there. But again, his impact goes beyond catching the ball. Like he is arguably the best blocking tight end in the league. And for the level of superstar that he is, I would say he's the best. But I'll always have some people saying, "Oh, well, so and so is better." But I would say Kittle's the best.
Yeah.
But for the level of superstar that he is, the fact that he gets his nose dirty and blocks the way that he does, to me, is even more impressive. He just outgained Travis Kelce in terms of yardage in the first 6 years. Nobody has more yardage in the first 6 years as a tight end than George Kittle. He beat him by 2 yards.
Kelce didn't play his first year. I saw that stat too.
It still counts.
Nah.
It still counts. Hey, Kittle was playing with like Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard his rookie year, right? So like, I mean, come on, and Brian Hoyer. So it's like, it all balances. But hey, I'll take it. He beat him by 2 yards, by the way. I'll take that. But George Kittle is the Offensive Player of the Year, in my opinion.
Love it. All right, let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive Player of the Year, non-Nick Bosa edition. So again, we had non-McCaffrey on the defensive side. This is non-Nick Bosa edition because obviously Nick Bosa is the Defensive Player of the Year, not only in the NFL, but for the 49ers. And I think arguably you could say that he should receive some MVP consideration based on his impact. But Defensive Player of the Year, non-Bosa edition. Al, why don't you go first?
Oh, man, this is a hard one. So I thought about this a little bit, and I thought Fred Warner. I thought Dre Greenlaw. Those guys both had great seasons. Warner had 130 tackles, Greenlaw 127. Greenlaw led the team with 82 solo tackles. I think Hufanga in the first half of the season, I probably would have voted him, but I think where I'm going to go with is Mooney Ward, Travarius Ward, because when E-Man goes down, they really needed him to be a number one corner, and I think he answered the bell overall. I think he had a really, really strong season. They went out, they paid him to do that, and he answered the bell. So I would go with him. That was a great addition. I'd hate to think where they would be without him after Mosley's injury. So he's my choice. It's a tough because, again, you can go a lot of different ways, but he'd be my choice.
I was going to go Mooney too, but I'll go somebody else just to keep it fresh. So I'm going to go Greenlaw, Dre Greenlaw. Big play, Dre. what a fantastic year he's had. He's really come into his own, violent player, always around the ball. He had that big interception in Seattle the big fumble recovery in Seattle, forced fumble in Seattle. And he is always near the ball. And that's all you can ask out of your linebacker. And when you could say that, the defense hasn't missed a beat since he's been hurt, but I mean, I think that's a reflection of people around him. But Dre Greenlaw, he is one of my favorite 49ers. He is the Seahawk killer, and I expect him to have another big game this weekend against the Seahawks.
Yeah, Mooney Ward, probably the correct answer. I love the Dre Greenlaw pick. I am going to go with All-Pro Fred. I think he is the glue that holds this defense together. I think he's the spiritual leader of the defense. I think that as he goes, this defense goes. And if you look at the games where the defense struggled, those tend to correlate with games where Fred didn't have a great game. And so I don't think there's another player in, if you heard people talk about the game prior to the 49ers playing the Dolphins and then talked about the game after the 49ers played the Dolphins couldn't run the offense they run specifically because of Fred Warner and his ability to eliminate the middle of the field. You don't see players his size, 6'3", right? You don't tend to see them at the linebacker position much anymore. And especially not with the athletic, the athletic profile that he has. And then I always think back to that, was it the second Rams game where he had that highlight where you see the Rams were running off left tackle, and the running back is on the opposite hash. You don't even see Fred Warner in the screen, and then all of a sudden you just see this missile come into the screen, and then he just goes fully horizontal like a missile and just hits Cam Akers and knocks him right on his ass. And I'm like, oh my God, might be one of my favorite plays of the entire season. But yeah, Fred Warner, captain of the defense, kind of feels like one of the spokespersons for the team. I think a lot of people look to him for his leadership, and I don't think this defense is what it is without him. And so I'm going to go with Fred Warner. But there's so many deserving players. I think, under the radar, you look at guys like Charles Omenihu, who I think had a huge season, Samson Ebukam, right? These guys opposite Nick Bosa. You could even talk about Eric Armstead and the impact he has, which you could see when he was out, right? They still had great run defense, but I feel like the pressure that the defensive line got on opposing quarterbacks ratcheted up a notch once Armstead came back. All right. This one is specific for me because I wanted to highlight this person. So I'm going to say assistant coach of the year, non-DeMeco Ryans edition, right? Obviously, I think DeMeco Ryans is the assistant coach of the year in the NFL. I don't know that we talk enough about, and also I don't know that there's enough out there about the job that Brian Griese as the quarterbacks coach has done, not only for Jimmy Garoppolo, but for Brock Purdy as well. Again, like I said, it's hard to quantify, but I don't feel like it's a coincidence that even prior to Christian McCaffrey coming here, Jimmy Garoppolo was playing better football. And I think that correlates specifically with Brian Griese. Here's the thing that Brian Griese brings to the job as quarterbacks coach: time in the Shanahan system and a full understanding of the verbiage and how to relate that to the quarterback specifically. And so I think he's done an incredible job. I don't think a lot of people talk about him, but that would be my pick as Brian Griese, quarterback coach.
Yeah, I don't know how you go anywhere else. I think that's perfect. And you look at the Niners passing numbers this year, and McCaffrey's throws included in this, but they completed 66% of their throws, threw for 4,049 yards, 30 touchdowns to only 9 interceptions. An interception percentage of just 1.8, 7.9 yards per attempt. Like you said, Garoppolo played probably his best football that I've seen. Purdy's been a revelation. We don't know about Trey Lance, but a lot of that has to do with Greasy, because again, Zane, I think you mentioned about Shanahan, and Shanahan has a huge part to do with it as well. But we mentioned the interceptions that we saw. There were a lot. It was about an interception a game for Shanahan throughout his whole career. This year, it hasn't happened. They've been down. They're under 10 interceptions this year, which is terrific. So, yeah, I got to go with Brian Greasy too. It was, one of those hires that people are like, oh, what the hell are they doing? They're getting him out of the booth, and it ended up being another good one. At some point, we got to kind of stop second guessing what this team does, because it tends to work.
Yeah.
So again, I'm gonna go against the grain. I would have chosen Greasy as well, but I'm gonna go with Chris Krosek and Kusarik, sorry.
Yeah.
Chris Kusarik. I'm eating a cough drop as we speak. I can't get my words out. So Chris Kusarik has done a phenomenal job with just this, almost like this revolving door of talent on the defensive line. That is the strength and backbone of the defense. As the defensive line goes, the rest of the defense goes. So it's beyond Nick Bosa. It's like you said, Samson Ebukam, and it's Jordan Willis who's making plays. It's Drake Jackson who's been making plays. It's guys that, even if they're not
T.Y. McGill,
who's been fantastic in the run game. Like, it just, they have been making plays all over the field at all times. And it's not just getting to the quarterback. It's tipping a pass for an interception, like against the Raiders, right? Like the defensive line, like they came up with a big pick. It's just, they've been an absolute force, and they've got two separate rotations of guys that can get after the quarterback and stop the run. And it's been just so great to see, and that they've been healthy, and they've been, this is what we've hoped for in terms of potential for the defensive line. So Chris Kusarik gets my assistant coach of the year.
Nice. And last thing on Brian Greasy. Greasy was also one of the ones that was high on Brock Purdy in the draft. They knew that they wanted to draft somebody, and they knew that it would be late. And so they focused on players that they thought would be there. And Purdy was the guy that Greasy and Peters both focused on. So, kudos to both those guys. We are up against it. So I'm gonna just pick one more. And I'm gonna say, what was your favorite game of the year? Favorite game of the year. I'll go first, because again, I was the one that came up with these awards. So I'll give you guys time to think about it. For me, and this is for a couple of reasons, but that Dolphins game, it was my game of the year. And the reason being is because, one, I was there. The only game I got to this season. So there's one. I was there. And then two, obviously, it is the birth of the Brock Purdy legend. The Mr. Irrelevant that became more than just relevant. And I was there for it. And so to me, that's the thing, is like, I really genuinely believe in Brock Purdy. I do think that he is going to be the quarterback moving forward. I don't think that they don't like Trey Lance. I just think that it's going to be hard for them to move away from him, especially if they make a deep run in the playoffs or a Super Bowl run, or what we're all hoping for, a Super Bowl victory. And I just think it's cool that I can say to my grandkids one day, hey, I was at the game that Brock Purdy came in to take over for Jimmy Garoppolo. So, and then not only that, but that team was hot as hell coming in, and they absolutely just stomped them out. And I think that was the beginning of this team being like, oh shit, this is a team to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. I guess I'll go next. I'm going to go hat and t-shirt game in Seattle on a Thursday night, short week. Brock Purdy had the oblique injury, gutted it out. And like you said earlier in the show, there wasn't one moment in that game where we thought Seattle was actually going to win that game. Dominant performance against a team that has given you fits over the years, in a place that's been a house of horrors for you. And you went up there, got a decisive win for the division, and essentially asserted your dominance atop of this division once again. It was psychologically huge. It was huge for the season to wrap it up so early. And it was huge for Brock Purdy's confidence, because he was able to go into a hostile environment, which we may see in the playoffs at some point, or maybe not. And he was able to get a really, really important win. Huge.
My favorite game was the Bucs game. And I'll tell you why. Because to me, I didn't know what to expect going into that game with Purdy. Played well against Miami, but Tampa Bay had a good defense. Not that Tampa Bay was a great team. This has been a great team this year, been a stretch of the imagination, but still Tom Brady. There's still a lot of talent there. The defense is still good. They were dealing with some injuries, and they came out and they just blew the doors off them. And that was as excited as I've gotten, doing this. And, when you kind of pull the curtain back, I always say, like, and you see how things happen, it can dull things a little bit. Like you start to look at things as a business and that sort of thing. You see the game a little bit differently. And also it's been a polarizing couple seasons with the fan base and the quarterbacks and people going at each other. And when you do content and you kind of put yourself out there, you hear a lot of shit from people. You really do. So it was a kind of contentious couple years. And that was the first time I felt in a little while where it was just like the fan just came out again.
Everybody was united.
Yeah, but even just for me personally,
oh yeah,
it was like the fan came out of me again for the first time in a really long time. Like I was like a pumping my fist Niners fan again for the first time in a while, and it felt good again because that's why I started doing this. That's because I love the team and everything like that. So I know it sounds kind of corny, but that was where it was for me. Like watching that game, like holy shit, like this is awesome. This is like special again. Like this is somebody the fan base is behind. It was cool. It was just cool. So. It was a blowout. It wasn't maybe like a game where you would think where it was a big comeback or anything. It just, for me personally, it was a game where I was like, yeah, this is it.
You know what it is, Al? This team is fun again for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me. It's fun. Like it's legitimately fun. Right. And that's different. That's different.
Last year, and some people may think I'm crazy by saying this because they went to the freaking NFC Championship game and had the late season run. Last year was not fun for me. And maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me personally. It felt like a stressful season. Yeah. It just felt like, I don't know. It was one of the strangest years I can remember being a fan of one of my ride or die teams. It was just weird. And I was happy, obviously you're coming close to the Super Bowl. It's great. But like, I don't know. It was like, it took a lot out of me or something. I don't know. Like you said, Brian, it's just right now, this is just fun again. It's just fun. I feel like it's kind of houses money with the quarterback, but they're still loaded. And I'm just having a good time being a fan again. And I feel like when I'm watching the games again, I'm not looking at it from business perspective or from like anything like that. Like I'm looking at it again, like, yeah, it's cool. This is fandom again. It's cool.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, before we get out of here, we have this question in the chat. I want to throw it up for you guys. Who you got tonight, Georgia or TCU?
I forgot the game was even on. So it tells you how into it I am.
I'm gonna say Georgia.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be like 50-13 Georgia. It's probably gonna be not competitive.
I wanted Harbaugh, honestly. I wanted Michigan, but
so did I.
Yeah. You mean future Indianapolis Colts head coach Jim Harbaugh? I agree. I agree. I'm gonna pick Georgia. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. But by the way, if TCU can pull this off, I mean, talk about a story, right? Sonny Dykes' first season as head coach, and they started the season unranked, and now they're in the national championship game. And if they can win it, I got to wonder, has there ever been a situation where a national champion started the season unranked? I don't know that answer. Somebody look that up for me and then tweet at me.
I mean, Sonny was a good coach here. Sonny was a good coach in the Bay, man. He had some good teams. Here, so yeah, he did. Yeah, absolutely. But also one more piece of news before we get out of here. It was announced earlier today that Damar Hamlin has been released from the hospital and is going home. Huge victory, huge win. Really, really happy to hear that. Awesome news.
Literally 7 days from 7 days ago. It was, man, unbelievable. Yeah. What a story. Good for Damar. Love it.
Yep.
All right, guys, we're up against it. Please like and subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Download us. And for Brian and Zane, I'm Al.
Peace.
Later.